I am the sole resident and owner of Kavik River Camp. In order to run a business, I have to cater to the people in the season that they're roaming around. I need to make enough revenue to support the camp and get ready for the next year.
In Alaska, survival isn't guaranteed. It's earned every single day. For years, the cast of Life Below Zero lived on the edge, pushing the limits of isolation, cold, and human endurance.
If I scare all the caribou, I'm going to scare the bear as well. These are bear tracks. This is a pretty big bear. He's not juvenile long stride. This is just King Mamma Jamma.
But now, rumors of death have surfaced, and the line between rumor and reality has never been colder. Who's still out there? Who did we lose? And what really happened beyond the cameras? Before everything else came into question, Life Below Zero stood out as something truly different. And maybe, if we look back at that legacy, we'll start to understand why it still hits so hard today. The legacy of Life Below Zero. Alaska is a place where nature doesn't make room for mistakes. The weather doesn't care who you are, and the land demands respect. Since 2013, Life Below Zero has taken viewers straight into that harsh, remote world, far from the comfort and the modern era. This isn't a scripted adventure or a wilderness game show. There's no cash prize, no eliminations, no celebrity guests. It's real life, filmed as it happens. The series follows people who live in some of the most isolated parts of Alaska, not for thrill or fame, but because it's the card they've been dealt with. The cold is real, and danger is more real. Every episode drops you straight into the brutal heart of the Alaskan wild. Frozen rivers stretch for miles. Storms tear across the land without warning. The snow never stops, and the sky feels so wide, it's almost suffocating. You witness the raw moments most of us will never face, carving through ice just to get water, chasing dinner across the snow by snowmobile, patching a roof as the blizzard closes in. There's no rescue crew, no second chances. Out here, if something breaks, you fix it. If the generator dies, you figure it out, or you freeze. But what makes Life Below Zero different isn't just the survival aspect. It's how quietly powerful it is. There's no need to hype things up. A broken snowshoe can be as dramatic as a bear encounter if it means you can't get home. A missed hunting shot can mean no food for the week. That's the kind of pressure Life Below Zero captures so well. It doesn't need big moments or loud drama to hook you. Instead, it's the quiet tension, where even a small mistake can mean real trouble, that keeps you watching. The film crew deserves credit too. Shooting in conditions where batteries freeze in minutes and daylight barely shows up is no joke. They haul gear across snowfields, dodge wild animals, and still manage to get these breathtaking shots of real life unfolding in brutal environments. This level of commitment is rare. That's what makes the show feel real. It doesn't fake the struggle or dress it up. It simply shows life as it is, and that's exactly why it hits so hard. At its heart, Life Below Zero is about self-reliance. It's about people living with what they've got, where they are, and making it work, even when it shouldn't. You see, most of us will never live off the grid, but watching someone trap, fish, and build everything by hand taps into something we all understand, which is the need to survive, the pride in doing it yourself, and the quiet joy in mastering a world most would run from. The show also got a lot of people talking about how we live, how much we actually need as humans, and what it means to respect nature, instead of always trying to control it. Viewers started looking into traditional skills like making tools or preserving food. It reminded people that independence isn't outdated, yet rather still powerful. Over the years, Life Below Zero became something bigger than a documentary. It turned into a show of what life looks like without shortcuts. There's no app to hunt your food, no delivery when the snow is 6 feet deep. It's all on you. And watching people face that kind of life without complaint, backup, and without excuses hits differently. It wasn't about shock value. It was about reality and the quiet strength it takes to live it. That's the legacy of Life Below Zero. The wilderness gave it all the drama it could ever want. Now, surviving in the Alaskan wild is one thing, but when the cameras stop rolling and rumors start spreading, the questions get a little harder to shake. Danger is real. But what about death? Alaska doesn't give second chances. One wrong move, one broken piece of gear, one bad call in the middle of nowhere, and that could be potentially fatal. That's the reality the cast of Life Below Zero signed up for. We've seen them cross frozen rivers with packs on their backs. We've watched them build shelters in the wind, skin caribou in freezing temperatures, and repair busted snowmobiles when getting help is hours or days away. It's easy to admire from a distance. But when you take a closer look, you realize that any of those scenes could go sideways in seconds. Out here, getting lost can mean never being found. One slip on the ice, and a person could have hypothermia. One missed step while hunting, and now you're face to face with a grizzly that doesn't back down. There are no hospitals nearby, no ambulances ready to roll. The dangers are actually very real, and they're everywhere. And this is where the questions begin. When you watch a show like Life Below Zero, you can't help but wonder, has anyone ever not made it back? When you live that far out, when you're constantly pushing against the edge, what happens when the wild finally pushes back harder? Over the years, fans have started to ask those exact questions, causing the rumors to spread even more. Posts started popping up in online forums, threads on Reddit, TikTok videos claiming one of the cast members had died. Some were vague, others called names. There were screenshots, dramatic captions, and breaking news headlines that made it seem like the worst had happened. Suddenly, everyone was talking, but no one could tell if any of it was true. And that's the thing about rumors. Once they start, they spread fast, especially when the setting is already dangerous and remote. It doesn't take much for a rumor to feel believable when you're talking about survivalists living in some of the harshest conditions on Earth. To be fair, Life Below Zero has shown close calls before. There have been injuries, accidents, and moments where things looked pretty bleak. Viewers have seen equipment failures in the middle of winter storms. They've watched characters limp back to camp or explain how they almost didn't make it. So when a rumor pops up saying someone died, it doesn't sound far-fetched. It sounds very much possible. Also, when the cast goes mute on social media, or an episode ends with someone walking into the wilderness alone, that silence starts to feel heavy. People fill in the blanks. Did something happen off camera? Are they okay? Why haven't they posted? Why didn't they come back for the new season? Of course, fans are invested. They've watched these people live through things most of us couldn't handle for a day. So any news, especially bad news, hits hard. These aren't actors with roles. They're real people living raw and rugged lives, which makes the rumors even more unsettling. But are they really true? Did Alaska finally claim one of its own? Or is this another internet myth gone wild? Now that we've seen the brutal world they called home, it's time to talk about the people who dared to survive it and what really happened when the cameras stopped rolling. Sue Aikens, the woman who didn't flinch. If there's one person from Life Below Zero that viewers never forget, it's Sue Aikens. Tough, outspoken, and wildly self-reliant, Sue brought her real life into cameras. Born on July 1, 1963 in Chicago, Sue didn't stay in the city long. By the time she was a kid, she was already being introduced to the wild. Her mother moved the family to Alaska, and by 12, Sue was learning how to live off the land. That early exposure set the tone. She didn't shy away from the rough stuff. She leaned into it. Fast forward to adulthood, and Sue became a legend in Life Below Zero, running her home in one of the most isolated places in the country, Kavik River Camp, a former fuel stop turned survival base. She ran it alone, 197 miles north of the Arctic Circle. The fascinating part is that there were no neighbors, no stores, and no paved roads in this place. And yet, this is where she thrived. On Life Below Zero, viewers watched Sue haul supplies, battle extreme weather, and face down threats the average person would panic over. What makes Sue compelling is her honesty. She doesn't sugarcoat anything. She talks about the toll and what it does to her. We've seen Sue in tears, heard her curse storms that tear her roof apart, but she keeps going. Beyond survival, she runs the Kavik camp as a business. She handles bookings, manages fuel and food supplies for guests, pilots, researchers, and brave tourists. And while the show made her a public figure, she never leaned into fame. If anything, she stayed more private than ever. Off camera, Sue's life hasn't been easy. She lost 2 husbands, one to brain cancer, another under sadder circumstances. Sue also has 2 grown children and grandchildren she visits when off camera. In interviews, she says Alaska is the place where she feels most herself. That mindset explains a lot. Sue doesn't see Alaska as an obstacle. She sees it as home. And when the camera pans across her frozen surroundings, you can feel that it's more than scenery. It's a way of life, one she refuses to give up, no matter how brutal it gets. Physically, the lifestyle has taken a toll. In recent seasons, she's talked about pain and the challenges of getting older out in the cold. But quitting is not in her vocabulary. What makes Sue unforgettable is her no-nonsense attitude. In one episode, after trying to raise a heavy plywood sheet onto her roof, she mutters, "I can't do it." But she doesn't stop. She cuts the board in half, finishes the job, and shakes off the frustration. This kind of raw energy made her one of the foundations of Life Below Zero. Sue was the soul of the show. She didn't just survive Alaska. She made it bend to her. And in doing so, she gave viewers a front-row seat to a kind of life that's rare, real, and unforgettable. After everything she's faced, you'd think nothing could stop Sue Aikens. But lately, there's been questions floating around that no one seems sure how to answer. Is Sue Aikens still out there, living off the grid? Or has the wilderness finally caught up with her? Survivor, not a statistic. Sue Aikens is one of those rare people who seem almost untouchable by the harsh realities of life in the Alaskan wilderness. Back in 2007, Sue faced a challenge that would have broken most people. Alone at Kavik River Camp, hundreds of miles from civilization, she was attacked by a grizzly bear. Here's what happened. Sue was near her camp at the Kavik River when she noticed a male grizzly bear burying caribou carcasses near her camp. These carcasses were a problem because the area doubled as a helicopter landing pad, so she knew she had to move them. One day, while fetching water from the river, she had to put down her rifle to operate the pump with both hands. That's when the bear, hiding just out of sight on the riverbank, launched an attack. It grabbed her, dragged her into the tundra, and began what Sue calls an alpha push. Alpha push is a bear's way of asserting dominance rather than hunting for food. Sue's quick thinking was what probably even saved her life. Instead of fighting back immediately, she played submissive, which confused the bear. She explained it like this. The bear was basically saying, "I'm going to kick your butt unless you give it to me willingly." By acting like she was backing down, she earned some points on the bear's alpha scale, making it less likely to escalate the attack. Still, the bear bit her head and dislocated both her hips, dragging her around violently. The injuries were severe: open wounds, dislocated hips, and deep bite marks on her skull. Despite the pain and shock, Sue managed to sew her own wounds and, incredibly, found the strength to track down and kill the bear that attacked her. But her ordeal wasn't over. She was stranded and alone for 10 days before anyone found her. She tried calling local troopers and others, but no one could reach her. During those 10 days, she fought to survive with her injuries in the freezing Alaskan wilderness. When rescuers finally arrived, she was airlifted to a hospital, where doctors put her hips back into place and treated her wounds. Even years later, Sue says she can still feel where the bear's teeth tore into her head. One might think an attack like that would make someone want to leave the wild behind. But not Sue. She's as tough as they come. She went right back to her remote camp and continues to live there, managing the Kavik River camp and welcoming visitors. But then, fast forward to 2023, rumors began circulating online claiming that Sue had passed away. We never can really tell what fuels those rumors, but they are completely false. She has been the target of multiple death hoaxes over the years, but as of 2025, Sue is very much alive and thriving. She regularly posts updates about her life on social media, showing fans that she's still out there, strong and independent. At 62 years old, she continues to embody the rugged determination that made her a fan favorite on Life Below Zero. While Sue's story is one of fierce independence, the Hailstones show us a different side of life in Alaska. What happens where family ties and fierce determination paint a very different picture of life below zero. Chip and Agnes Hailstone, life beyond the Arctic Circle. Out where the sun barely peeks over the horizon in winter and the cold bites harder than anywhere else, Chip and Agnes Hailstone have built a life that's both tough and deeply rooted. For generations, they've lived near Norvik along the Kobuk River, just north of the Arctic Circle, where their story highlights family, culture, and the preservation of traditions, rather than just survival. Let's start with Chip. Born Edward Phoebe Hailstone in Kalispell, Montana, he moved to Alaska in 1988 at the age of 19. What was supposed to be a short adventure turned into a lifetime commitment. The vast, wild beauty of Alaska grabbed hold of him, and there was no turning back. There, he met Agnes, a woman raised by the Inupiaq people, deeply rooted in the land and its traditions. Together, they built a family and a life that blends old customs with the daily demands of the Arctic. Together, the couple have 7 children: Kutan, Tinmiak, Iriktuk, Caroline, and Mary, as well as 2 sons, Douglas and John, from Agnes's previous marriage. Chip and Agnes believe teaching their children these survival skills is more than practical. It's a way to keep their culture alive. Watching their children master the skills of trapping, food preparation, and seasonal adaptation reveals a narrative of legacy that goes beyond mere survival. Life Below Zero offered a rare look at their world. A blend of hard work, close calls, and quiet beauty, where Chip and Agnes balanced checking traps in the cold with preparing food by the fire. It's tough, no doubt, but for them, this lifestyle isn't only a choice. It's a connection to who they are and where they come from. Of course, life here isn't without struggles. Chip's path hasn't been smooth. In 2017, Chip ran into serious trouble when he was convicted of making false statements to Alaska state troopers during an investigation. He ended up serving about 15 months in prison. But after his release in 2018, Chip resumed his defining work, while Agnes ensured the family's stability, navigating uncertainty together. One of the most striking things about Agnes is her chin tattoo, a mark of Inupiaq heritage she received as a young woman. It's more than decoration, it's a symbol of maturity, hard work, and pride in her culture. That tattoo represents a deep respect for the traditions that guide their lives and the importance of passing those values down to their children. Today, Chip and Agnes continue their life in Nurvik, surrounded by family and the land they love. Even as the world changes around them, they remain tied to the rhythms of nature, the lessons of their ancestors, and the unspoken bond that comes from living close to the earth. Moving forward, let's turn to a man whose story is full of unexpected twists and a connection to the wild that runs deep. Jesse Holmes. Born in a small town in Alabama, Jesse packed up his life and headed to Alaska, chasing a dream few dare to chase. Settling in the tiny town of Nenana, Jesse embraced a way of life far from the comforts of home. He wasn't merely surviving the Alaskan wild, he was living it, raising over 40 sled dogs and carving out his place in one of the toughest environments on Earth. On Life Below Zero, Jesse's story has unfolded as a powerful mix of grit, quiet strength, and raw connection with the land. His days are filled with training dogs, building shelters, and battling the unforgiving cold. Viewers have watched him face challenges head-on with a steady calm, making him one of the show's most respected and beloved figures. Then, there was a moment that tested everything. In late 2022, while helping clean up after a fierce storm in Golovin, Jesse suffered a serious accident. A heavy piece of debris fell on him, breaking his ribs, a wrist, and causing internal injuries. It was a close call. But even in the hospital, Jesse's spirit stayed strong. He was grateful for the support pouring in from the tight-knit Alaska community and focused on healing. Jesse's recovery wasn't just about bouncing back. It was about coming back stronger. He threw himself into rehabilitation and training with a determination that reflected everything fans admire about him. His bond with his dogs never wavered. This bond and his relentless drive pushed him toward an incredible comeback. In 2025, Jesse Holmes made history. He won the Iditarod Trail Sled Dog Race, a grueling one, 128-mile journey across Alaska's frozen landscape. This is the longest race due to scarce snow, and Jesse's time of just over 10 days placed him at the top among the world's best mushers. Leading his team, including dogs Hercules and Polar, he crossed the finish line in Nome to the cheers of fans and fellow racers alike. Jesse's story is more about a man who followed his passion into the wild, faced near tragedy, and came back to reach the peak of his sport. His journey on Life Below Zero shows us the true meaning of resilience and the deep, unbreakable bond between a musher and his dogs. Not everyone from Life Below Zero stays in front of the cameras, but their lives keep moving and sometimes changing in ways you wouldn't expect. Different paths, one wild Alaska. When you think of the rugged wilderness of Alaska, a few names from Life Below Zero immediately come to mind. Among them, Andy Basich, Denise Becker, and Glenn Villeneuve have each carved out their own unique paths, showing us different sides of life off the grid. Let's start with Andy Basich, a man who has become a symbol of steady survival on the Yukon River. Andy Basich has been one of the most steady presences on Life Below Zero. Living near Eagle, Alaska, on the banks of the Yukon River, Andy's life is deeply entwined with the land and the dogs he cares for. At 67, he's far from slowing down. Alongside his partner Denise Becker, Andy continues the lifestyle fans have come to respect. Raising a pack of 25 sled dogs, hunting, building, and managing a homestead that demands constant attention. His resourcefulness and no-nonsense approach have made him a standout figure on the show, showing what it takes to thrive where nature calls the shots. His relationship with Denise, who joined him on the homestead after his divorce from Kate Rourke, added a new dynamic to his story, highlighting themes of companionship and shared survival in the harsh Alaskan environment. Also, back in 2018, Andy Bassick faced a serious health scare that changed everything for him. While trying to free a snow machine stuck in deep snow, he injured his hip badly. The injury got infected and spread to both his muscle and bone, nearly costing him his life. Because medical help is so limited out in the wilderness, Andy had to be airlifted all the way to Florida to get treatment. He spent about 6 months recovering there with Denise Becker, who's not only his partner but also a trauma nurse. When he finally made it back to Alaska, his homestead had been left unattended for months. Even on crutches, Andy threw himself into rebuilding his home and caring for his sled dogs. His experience was a huge wake-up call about how dangerous life in the Alaskan wild can be, even for someone as tough as Andy. It also made him rethink what he wanted from life and the kind of pace he could keep going forward. Speaking of Denise Becker, her journey has quietly shaped much of Andy's life off the grid. Denise Becker stepped into the spotlight through her life with Andy. Though she eventually stepped back from the show for health reasons, Denise's presence in Andy's story remains important. Choosing to live in such a remote and demanding place isn't easy, but Denise embraced it fully, sharing in the daily grind of caring for dogs, managing supplies, and weathering the brutal Alaskan winters. Her quiet strength and dedication reflect the kind of partnership that can make or break a life in the wilderness. Her dedication to this lifestyle has never faltered, even off-camera. And then there's Glenn Villeneuve, whose story took a different turn after years of living in isolation. Glenn brought a unique energy to life below zero, with his deep connection to the land and solitary lifestyle. Following season 11, Glenn started a new chapter after leaving the show due to creative differences. Now he lives in Fairbanks with his partner Tricia and their 3 children. This shift from isolated homesteader to family man in town shows how life off the grid can change, reminding us that even the most independent souls evolve. Glenn's story highlights that survival isn't just about living off the land. It's about adapting to whatever life throws your way. And sometimes, that means embracing connection over solitude. But the story doesn't end with the main cast. There's another side to this Alaskan universe where the stakes have been far more permanent. Life below zero. Port protection. If Life Below Zero showed us the brutal beauty of surviving in Alaska's wildest corners, then Port Protection took us even deeper into what it really means to live far from the grid. It's not a spin-off in name only, it's part of the same universe, cut from the same icy cloth. Port Protection first aired in 2015, following a small group of people living in a remote coastal village on Prince of Wales Island. No roads, grocery stores, or even safety nets, just water, weather, and raw willpower. In 2020, the series was officially rebranded as Life Below Zero, Port Protection, making the connection crystal clear. But it's more than branding. Both shows are produced by the same Emmy-winning team and share the same signature documentary style. Sweeping drone shots, close-ups of calloused hands, and the eerie silence only the Alaskan wilderness can hold. What really ties them together, though, is the soul of the storytelling. Life Below Zero is about fighting the elements, while Port Protection is about building a life within them. And while the main cast of Life Below Zero never crossed paths with port protection residents on camera, fans still felt a connection. Viewers who were drawn to Sue Aikens braving grizzlies found themselves equally hooked, watching someone in port protection building a home from driftwood or hauling in a salmon with bare hands. It was more like different lives, same grit. Although the main Life Below Zero cast are still alive, the extended family faces tougher realities, especially in port protection, where life's endings are unscripted and real. First, let's talk about the man who became the face of rugged independence, Gary Muehlberger. Gary wasn't flashy. He didn't chase attention or try to impress the camera. But what made him unforgettable was how effortlessly he lived off the land. A lifelong resident of port protection, Gary could fix a boat with scrap metal, catch fish in his sleep, and talk to neighbors like family. You could tell, the moment he stepped on screen, that he didn't play. Literally, he lived to it. In March 2021, tragedy struck. Gary's home caught fire, and when the flames died down, responders found remains inside. It was confirmed. Gary had died in the fire. He was 75 years old. For viewers, it felt personal. Fans flooded comment sections with memories and condolences. Nat Geo shared a tribute online, calling him a legend, and people from all over the world mourned a man they'd never met in person, but felt like they had known. Because Gary wasn't just a character, he was the heart of port protection. Then, we had the woman whose quiet strength made her unforgettable, Litzy Botello. If Gary was the builder and fixer, Litzy was the artist and soul. She brought a rare gentleness to the screen with a resilience that ran deep. A talented sculptor and a master at living off the sea, Litzy carved out a space in the show that was both fierce and full of grace. Even after losing both of her sons, she stayed rooted in that isolated stretch of Alaska, choosing to keep going, creating, and giving. Litzy passed away at 62 in June 2021 after battling cancer. Her death wasn't dramatic. It didn't come with headlines. But for fans, it hit hard. Comments poured in, remembering her for her spirit, her humor, and the way she made Alaska feel like home. She wasn't loud, but she was strong, and she never needed to prove it. These weren't plot twists. They were real people who lived lives and lost them too soon. And in that corner of Alaska, you can still feel them. But then, is living off the grid really a noble choice or a last resort wrapped in pretty packaging to look inspiring? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. To enjoy more content like this, click on the next video on your screen.